Good morning, and welcome to the 7 Habits of Highly Successful Cleaning Service Owners and Managers. This is part 3 of the trilogy. This is probably my favorite part because it's where everything wraps together. All the hard work you've put into habits 1, 2, and 3, you now get to utilize in habits 4, 5, and 6, and everything starts to click. The 3 habits we're going to talk about today are seek first to understand and then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. Let's begin by going back just a little bit and reviewing what we discussed the last time we were together, and that's habits. Habits make our life good or bad. Hopefully you've started a habit by now and you're understanding the great things that are coming about because of that habit you've developed. There's something you must do daily. You have no idea you're doing them. They're automatic. When you put them all together, they are who you are. And good habits give you a good life, and bad habits give you a bad life. Habits, you have to have 3 things in order to have a habit. You have to have knowledge, skill, and most of all, desire. It's important to note that you have the power to add or change your habits, and only you have that power, and that you're responsible for your own life. You can't look to others to take care of you. Habits are your habits, nobody else's, and they make your life nobody else's. So you really are responsible, and you have the ability to choose your response to anything in life, to create a habit, a good habit, or not create a habit. That's all yours. It's nobody else. Nobody else controls your life but you. The 7 habits we're going to go through and went through are be proactive. It all begins with that. Then, of course, begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Think win-win. And today we're going to discuss seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and renewal. Again, my favorite 3. So if you remember, habit number 1 was being proactive. It's the first and most basic habit. If you're watching part 3 before you watch part 1, go back and watch part 1. You need to take response, and parts 2. You need to take responsibility for your own life, as we discussed just a little while ago, and you need to act or you're going to be acted upon. That's all about being proactive, taking control of your own life. You have the ability and the responsibility to make things happen. You need to use your time and energy wisely to conquer habit 1. Proactive managers who can get this under control and proactive owners are they're smart, they know right from wrong, they don't kid themselves, they see things as they really are. And we'll learn today they see that because they see them through the eyes of others as well as their own, and they know what they need to do. And of course they do it. Habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. These are values, leadership, and management. Habit number 2 is doing the right things. It's the core values. It's what matters most to you. It's planning, and again, it's your responsibility, how your life is going to end up. Put first things first. This really is when you start putting first things first. You do what we need to do rather than what we'd like to do. Habit number 3 is really doing the plan. Habit number 2 is the plan. Habit number 3 is doing it. It's the tedious and disciplined habit. You can think proactively and you can plan what you want the end of your life to be like, but if you never start that life, if you can't be proactive, if you can't begin it, then you're not going to be able to go onto habits 4, 5, 6, and 7. This, as I said, it's the tedious, it's the disciplined. We all appreciate and respect disciplined people, so it takes some willpower. It takes some determination. You need to determine whether or not this particular habit is urgent. Each time you want to do one of these things, you have to put it on your, even though it's important, you have to put it on your urgent list, on your things to do list. And this is the one habit that all successful people share. I do believe this is where the 2% comes from when I always talk about 2% of the people doing 2% of the things and being very, very successful. The successful person has a habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. We discussed that. So habit number 4 was think win-win. You take the step from independence to interdependence, and you take on a leadership role, because whenever you're interdependent, you have some impact on other people. So you have some leadership role there. There are 6 paradigms of human interaction. Win-win, which is, of course, what we're all seeking. Win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose, win, or win or no deal, which we determined was better to take than any of the 4 in between. Leaders think win-win, of course. It requires a frame of mind and a heart that seeks really a mutual benefit, and we're going to learn today that if you don't understand how the other person is feeling, that can't possibly happen. Everybody feels good when decisions are made at the end, and they're committed to an action plan because they really didn't just buy into it, they helped create it. And it's great because once you think win-win and everybody is on the same team, and it's not necessarily your way, but it's a better way, things will go even smoother. So let's begin with habit number 5. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. There are some amazing insights into the management of people, I believe, especially at the level we're managing. In this 5th habit, seek first to understand and then to be understood. It's all about communication, and communication is the most important skill in life. I don't care how intelligent you are or what you can develop. If you cannot communicate it with other people, it's not worth anything to you. It's interesting that we spend years learning how to read, how to write, and speak, but we never, ever learn anything about listening. And the first step to an effective interaction is a need to understand someone else, which requires listening. Stephen Covey, in his book 7 Habits, uses this example, and I think it's fabulous, in the necessity of understanding somebody else before, in other words, to diagnose the problem in order to give the right prescription. How would you feel if you went into an eye doctor and the eye doctor examined you and gave you a pair of glasses and you put them, or he actually took his glasses off and gave them to you and said, here, use these, and you put them on and you go, I can't see. It's blurry. Takes them off, takes them back from you, he puts them back on and he goes, they're fine to me. Gives them back to you and says, try a little harder. And you put them on again and of course they're still blurry. He puts them back on and goes, I don't understand what your problem is. I mean, would you have any faith in this person fixing your problem because you can't even diagnose it? It's an extremely good example of the necessity of being careful not to prescribe without diagnosing the problem first. It's the principle. So seek first to understand and then to be understood is the principal key to effective interpersonal communication. You've got to understand before you can fix problems as a manager. It requires empathic listening. You got to seek first to understand requires an entirely new paradigm shift. And believe me, it's not any easier for me than anybody, but I do understand it. We typically, as managers, go into people because we're putting so many fires out so fast. First, to be understood. This is like prescribing your own glasses for everyone with whom you interact because you know, you believe that, okay, I've seen this 14 times in employees. Here goes number 15. You have to tell me what's going to happen. Every single person is different. You need to see the world through their eyes so that you're sure you've got the correct fix to the problem you're facing. We've never been taught listening skills. I am a speech major, and I think it's amazing that I have 32 credits in speech classes, and there is not one single listening skills class in that particular arena. I'm thinking I should put a 3-credit course together because that's what intercommunications is all about. It's the underlying and most common challenge for most residential cleaning service owners. You can't, oftentimes when I listen to my clients, they say they can't understand their employees. They won't listen to me at all. I say, well, what did they say? And they'll tell me, well, I said blah, 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 blah. And I come back and say, but what did they say? And they'll say, well, I said, They aren't asking their employees any questions at all, which means they're not listening first to try and understand this problem. What they say is, she won't listen to me. And if you really want to solve the problem, you have to listen to them. To deeply understand your employee's situation from their frame of reference, don't you really need to be listening to them? I mean, really. When our employees speak, we listen at one of four levels. We're either ignoring them, we're not really listening at all. This would be when they all come in the morning and you're busy pulling supplies and getting things straightened out that weren't totally, things change. And no matter how much you get together the night before, you still do have things that pop up the next morning, like the employee who calls in and now you're trying to straighten out those problems and this person just is blah, 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 and you're not listening. You're just like not hearing a thing. Then there's pretending. You're acting like you're listening. You're throwing an aha every now and then. Again, you're in this very busy situation, and you're acting like you're caring about them, which is oftentimes when I say to people, do you have one-on-ones? Do you have meetings? They say, well, I see the girls every morning, or the employees every morning. And if you're doing ignoring listening or pretending listening, you aren't spending time with these employees. That's not a one-on-one. That's not valuable quality time. Then we do the selective listening part, where that really gets us in trouble because they're blah, blah, blahing, and we're kind of listening because they're talking about a client, and we think, well, maybe there's something I need to listen to here. And then all of a sudden you hear something very important, and now you're very embarrassed because you've only listened to part of it, and they know that. And then there's, of course, the attentive listening. When you actually take them in your office, you close the door, you sit down, and you have one-on-one focused attention time together. And that needs to be more than just when you're disciplining them. Then there's a fifth level, which is empathic listening. Once you get them in your office, this is listening to them with the intent to understand where they're coming from. It's getting inside their frame of reference, not thinking, okay, I'm going to close the door and we're going to have a good conversation, and again, you're going to talk at them. No, this is asking them questions, prying, bringing things out. I am telling my clients these days, it's just like when you interviewed the person the first day. I hope you have a list of questions that you go through and you listen attentively to their answers. Well, you should do the same thing when you're ready to have a one-on-one with a problem situation. You should make a list of questions out of what you're going to ask this employee so that when they go off on a tangent, you don't also go off on a tangent, and you don't get very important answers to very important questions. And that will allow you to see the world as they see it. This isn't sympathy. It's understanding. Sympathy, if you give too much sympathy to too many employees, because many of our employees are dependent, that makes them more dependent, because when they need something, they're going to come in and lay a sympathetic ear, and you're going to listen to them. They're going to have sympathy reasons why they can't achieve what your expectations are, and you're going to listen to them because they want you to lend them a sympathetic ear, and what you need to do is get an understanding ear so as a manager you can fix whatever the problem is. So communications are 10% the words we say, 30% is how we say it, and 60% is our body language. Now, I want you to understand this when you're communicating with them, but I also want you to take a look at them and see what the 90% of their body is telling you. I say this a lot to my clients when we talk about one-on-ones. I said, once you start doing them on a regular basis, you will know as soon as they sit down in that chair what's going on in their life just by their body language, how that team is, how the synergy is in that team, how that's going, which is why I did one-on-ones with teams, so I could see how I could catch a problem before it got so bad that they came in and said, I want a team change. I had very little of that because, number one, I refused to do it, but number two is because I could see that body language before we got to a problem situation. So watch how they're reacting. So I've brought this up here. Many of you have probably seen this before. Maybe you have not. It is a picture of, well, tell me what you see in that picture. if you've never seen this before, it is amazing. You can obviously, I think you can see, if you look right here, you see the face of a beautiful woman looking away. This is her hair, the black hair right here. So if you can see that, it's a beautiful woman looking away. She's got a feather coming out of her hat right here. And this is the rest of her hat right here. Okay? Now I'm going to try and clear that and show you where the other one is, because did you perhaps see this? Did you see the beautiful lady first, or did you see the old lady first? And there is an old lady in here. She is, this is her nose. This is her lips. This is her eye. And she, too, has a bonnet on, and this is her hair, this black area. So the reason I'm showing you this is two people can see it in entirely different things for the first time. Matter of fact, I always see the beautiful woman first. And because I'm an old lady, probably I try and hide that part. But I had to look at that a couple times when I went to search for it on Google to find out, okay, now where is this old lady? Because I couldn't see it at first. How two people can be so right, but yet see things so differently. Okay, so when you do empathic listening, you listen with your ears, you listen with your eyes, you listen with your heart, and you listen for feeling and meaning coming from the other person and from you. This is powerful stuff, because if you're doing that and really listening to the employee before you make the management side of you come out, this is the leadership and the coaching side, it's going to give you far more accurate data to work with, because if an employee feels comfortable with you, they're going to open up with what's really going on in their lives, and now you can really get to the heart of developing the seeds of greatness in this individual. Also, another thing that it gives is our employees learn trust in us if we really, really care about them. And if you really care about them, you ask a lot of questions. You take an interest in them. That's what's important, is taking the interest. So when you're taking that interest in them, you're, well, as I said, depositing lots in their emotional bank. But if you're not listening to them, like you're using that or you're talking at them, they're going to walk away thinking that this valuable time that you thought you had behind closed doors has indeed, and they have left thinking you're manipulative, you took them behind closed doors, you tried to talk them into what you wanted, or you're self-serving, she just wants me to do this because it's good for the company, or maybe you intimidated them. Maybe you made them like, oh, I'm scared to death of her, I have to do whatever she says. Or you were condescending and you talked down to them. Any of those interpretations can be taken away by the cleaner, the employee, or the manager, whoever you're dealing with. But you thought it was, oh, just a great interaction and things went great. So you think you have plus points in the emotional bank, when indeed you've got negative points in the emotional bank, because that person thinks you're manipulative. And it's because you really don't understand what really matters to them, because you never asked them enough questions to find out what really did matter to them. And you can't just go in there and sit down and say, okay, tell me how you feel about this, because that's not going to happen. You have to spend the time and ask the questions and do the nurturing. These people don't just open up, and you too have to be open. You have to understand that I think this is an interesting analogy, and I'm not exactly even sure what to do with it, but I wanted to share it with you. If the air was sucked out of your room right now, you could care less about what I had to say. You wouldn't even care about turning me off. All you would be interested in is trying to get some air so you can survive. It's your only motivation at that time, and survival is a big motivation at any time. But once you have the air, that motivation is gone, and now you're going to go back to doing whatever it is you want to do. Satisfied needs do not motivate. And I thought about this a little bit about when we bring tacos into our people one morning. They come in hungry. They eat them. We expect that taco to go with them for the next 2 weeks because lots of the owners that I talk to, my clients say, well, I bring them tacos. I do special things for them. Well, perhaps once the taco is eaten and they're not hungry anymore, we've lost all value in that taco. But we think that should motivate them for a long time, and that does not work. Satisfied needs are not motivated. And when I think about it, I did learn in the corporate world that salary increases only motivate a person for 3 days on the job. After you give them the raise and you've done the great review and they walk away, that raise sticks with them. Or once they get their first paycheck with the raise, that motivation and that excitement lasts for 3 days. So satisfied needs do not motivate. You need to work on development, long-term goals, things that don't satisfy that fast. That will keep them motivated. So the most important thing to people is, of course, number one, physical survival. You need the air. But second most important to people is psychological survival. These are things, whether you're in a business setting or a marriage setting or kids, people have to feel a strong need to be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, and to be appreciated. So you need to seek first to understand, then to be understood. You need, because it's very important to them, you need to let them know that they are very important to you, your employees, and you do that by listening to them. You need to validate what you heard, which means you need to support when you decide how you're going to solve this problem. You put what they said into the solution so that you validate that you did listen to them, and then they need to be appreciated. And that's on an ongoing basis. Once you have a solution to this problem, you need to continue to tell them, hey, great job. Have more one-on-ones, of course, with them so you can continue to say, hey, great job. Empathetic listening, therefore, provides psychological air to your employees. The part that they really need is the psychological survival part. It's the survival part just like air psychologically for them. Now they're happy, they're content, and you can focus on influencing or problem solving because they feel you have listened to them, they feel they trust you, you validated them. It'll be much easier to manage them. So this process impacts communications in every area of your business. You need to remember this every time you communicate with anybody. You need to seek first to understand, then to be understood. Because if you don't, there's going to be no confidence in the diagnosis whatsoever. In the prescription whatsoever. And really, when you're problem solving, you're like a doctor. You are giving a prescription, an answer to their problem. And we don't think of ourselves as doctors, but really we are diagnosticians who figure out what the problem is, the real problem, so that we can then give the real solution or the right prescription. So a mature manager seeks first to understand the needs, the concerns, the situations of the people they're in. Immature people start fixing right away. As soon as something goes wrong, they call that employee in there and they tell them blah, 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 blah. There's no diagnosis there, which is why I say you never talk about problems in meetings because it's not going to get you anywhere. You're just going to speak at them and you're never going to get a solution to this problem. If they missed the top of the refrigerator, why did they? And if you just bring it up at a meeting, they're going to do it again because you're just talking at them. When you have problem situations, it should be done on one-on-ones in your office and not in meetings. Meetings should be developmental where they know you really care about them and their future. So this autobiographical listening is really what we have a tendency to do, and that's when you think you're listening to them, but you're really not. You're still coming from your own frame of reference because All we really know is our autobiography. When we do autobiographical listening, we come from one of four directions. We're either evaluating while we're listening so we can figure out whether we are going to agree or disagree with what this employee is saying, or we're probing, we're asking questions of them from our frame of reference. And that's what I mean when you need to ask employees a list of questions, you need to write them out the day before so that you don't put your evaluation into the questions you're giving to them. So you're trying to get the answer you're looking for, so you make them up as you go so it goes in your direction. That's your own frame of reference. You need to really find out what happened. We advise, we give counsel based on our experience. We don't ask them enough questions, or we interpret. We try to figure people out while they're talking. We're trying to explain their motives, their behaviors. We're interpreting while we're listening, and we're not really listening, and that's based on our motives and behaviors. So we're interpreting what they did based on our frame of reference, because I thought, well, I did that once, and I did that because blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking that while I'm listening to them and putting my frame of reference on it. I should ask them, why did you blah, blah, blah? So if you do autobiographical listening from keeping everything from your frame of reference, your advice not be any good at all, because you're not really addressing the real problem, because you never found out what the real problem was, because you never looked at it from your employee's frame of reference. You'll never get to the real problem if you don't keep asking questions from their side. Empathic listening takes time. I mean, your 4 or 5 minute, here's the problem, here's what we're going to do, conversation is turned into a 20-minute conversation because you're listening and asking questions and listening and asking questions. But in the long run, it saves so much time because it keeps you from having to back up and go, okay, this problem's still going on, now what's going on? I cannot get this fire put out and to stay out. But if you take the time to do it right the first time, that fire will never pop back up again. Employees really want to be understood. Most employees feel they are not. So then there's another half of habit number 5. Once you understand, now you have to be understood. And the mature manager or owner can find a balance between consideration and courage, and that's really what we're talking about. The understanding part is consideration. The courage part is being understood. Win-win requires a high degree, win-win communication, which we talked about in our last habit, requires a high degree of both consideration and courage. Seeking to understand requires the consideration, as I said, and seeking to be understood requires the courage, which many owners don't have. There's a Greek philosophy that we're all ethos, pathos, or logos. We're driven by one of the 3 of these. Ethos is personal credibility. This is the faith people have in your integrity and your competency. So it's who you are. And if you have ethos and people have a high degree of competence in your integrity and competency, then it's much easier to communicate with these people because they trust you and they'll open up more. Then there's pathos. That's the empathic side, feeling that you are in alignment with the other person. And then there's logos, which is the logical reasoning side of a presentation. So you've got 3 different ways that you can come at this. You can either, and when it comes to character, relationship, and logic, most people go straight to the logic. So when we're communicating with our people, we're going to go right to the solution, and that's why we pass over the pathos and the ethos. You need to take responsibility for the lack of communications. I'm going to say that. Many people say, well, I'll hear clients and I'll say, well, what did they say? And they'll say, well, they really never speak up. well, you need to get them to speak up, again, by asking more questions. If you feel that you did not communicate well with the employee, it's really not the employee's fault. It is yours. And an example that Stephen Covey uses, which is perfect, is when a sales rep doesn't sell well, do they send the people they're trying to buy to a conference to learn how to sell, or do they send the salesman back to retrain to learn how to sell? This is the same thing. Your job is to sell your concepts, your company, to your employees. And if you can't do that, what are you going to do? Send all your employees to a school on how to get along with you? Or do you need to learn how to communicate with them? So you have to take responsibility for this and work on your communication skills. One-on-ones are a great way to communicate well. You're listening to understand in that scenario, and it will bring your communications to a new level. They'll open up more on one-on-ones if you start asking them more questions. Most owners say to me, well, what do we discuss in one-on-ones? And I say, you discuss them. That's the one-on-one time when you discuss their futures, their goals, that hopefully you have sat down and talked about. And once you're at this level with them, it's going to bring you a new level of influence because they trust you and they know you have only their best interest in heart. Daily interaction, when you see them first thing in the morning and they come in, be sensitive to their body language. As soon as they walk in that door, you know what kind of a mood they're in. Look at them and immediately evaluate that. And if you feel that they need a soft reminder, a sincere reminder of how much they mean to your company and how glad you are that they're there, maybe you should take them in your office and do just that, because that might make the difference between them loving that job that day and hating it, and you can see by their body language they're not having a good day. Don't push. While they're in there, you can ask them whether or not they would like to talk about it, and if they say no, just say, well, I just wanted to let you know what you mean to me, and I'm here if you need me. Those things put dollars into your emotional bank, and those things mean more to them, really, than you bringing tacos for everybody, because then they're just one of another person there. And what you need to do is develop a deep relationship with each one of your employees, but keeping at a I am leading you level, not an I want to be a friend of yours level. So I want you to please think of how you would handle these situations with an empathic approach. A cleaner wants a team change. They come into you and say, I cannot stand my partners. I want to change right away. How would you handle that differently now, thinking about empathic cleaning, than you would have before? Or how would you handle it? Maybe it would be the same way, but how would you handle that? Another one is the client insists on this cleaner, and the cleaner does not want to clean this client anymore. So she hates this client. You know you'll lose this client if the cleaner doesn't clean her. How are you going to handle this? You could put it on pause and give some thought to both of these situations, and I'll see you for habit number 6. Welcome back. Habit number 6 is synergize. This is where all the other habits prepare us for, this habit, the synergy habit. And when everybody in your company is working with habits and doing these types of things that we've been talking about with the first 5 habits, it's an amazing situation. So we realize when we are all working together that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Synergy can be seen everywhere in nature. Whenever you put 2 things together, it's going to be stronger. You plant 2 plants. Why do you think corn is grown in a row? Because the roots can commingle, the soil's improved, the plants grow stronger than if they were separated. When you have a thin piece of thread, if you coil together 10 pieces of thread, it's very hard to tear that thread. But one alone is very easy to tear. So a company is exactly the same way. If everybody's working together, a company with employees is going to be stronger than a company with just an owner cleaning houses. this does require a very huge paradigm shift in your thought process, and we've talked about this before, but everyone has to, in order to truly synergize, everyone has to be thinking no longer independent, but interdependent. And that's difficult because we were brought up, again, to be as independent as we can, but once you learn that two people or more doing things together makes it easier and more fun, you will never want to go backwards, and you will definitely want to figure this out and try to make things all win-win, because you realize life is so much more fun that way. So our mission statement in life, what Stephen Covey says, is to empower people to significantly increase performance capability in order to achieve worthwhile purposes by leading through understanding and living principle-centered lives. So again, our mission as owners is to empower our employees to significantly increase their performance capabilities, do a better job, more houses, do them better, in order to achieve worthwhile purposes by leading through, while you're leading through understanding, listening to them, and living a principle-centered life, which means you're listening to them, but you still have your principles and you know how your company is going to run. That's a model. That's not people. If people have a low trust level in you, you're going to have a low level of communication, and you're not going to find out what the problems are because they're not going to open up to you. People are defensive. They will come back naturally to do that. They're protective of their real feelings many times, and they'll threaten to quit or sue or no-show you because that's the easiest, if you don't get inside of them so that they can tell you the real problem. And that's, of course, at the lowest level of communication. And let's go back. Forgive me for that. But if this is what you're hearing, you are at the lowest level of communication. If people are defensive in your office, if they don't open up to you, if they threaten to quit, if they're going to sue, if you hear a lot, I'm going to sue, if your office is driven by being afraid of people threatening to sue, or if they no-show you, they don't even have the respect to call in the morning, they call in the afternoon, you have a very low level of communications, and you have absolutely your people have no level of trust in you, so they're not going to open up. If you have middle-level communications, this is respectful communications, they're better. You're still not at the level you're looking for, but you do respect one another. You want to avoid any confrontation because they respect you as an owner and you respect them as an employee. It's a better level than people screaming at one another in offices, which, by the way, goes on all over this country. But if it does, your office is dysfunctional. If you have an employee yelling at you or you're raising your voice to them, you have a dysfunctional office and a very low level of communications, and there is a way to fix that. You just learned it. If you communicate, but you can communicate politely, but not empathically. And if you're not at that empathic level, then you are not going to always get the true answers out of your employees, and you still could have people quit and surprise you. And you don't know where it came from. You suddenly find out they don't like their jobs. You didn't even know they were looking for another one because you're communicating, but not empathically. These types of the middle-level communication does work. I mean, you don't have a dysfunctional office, so it does work. And it works in independent situations and even interdependent situations. So you can still have your people not totally synergized, but you do have a very functional office that will grow. The problem here is you don't have the creative possibilities because you really are always still compromising. You're still telling that employee what you need done. If they have some issues with something, you're going to work with them on it because you do compromise. But when you compromise, both of you give something up. So instead of having 1 and 1 be 2 or 3 or more, you've lost a little bit because you have compromised. It's not the synergistic level of a win-win situation. So we all have, truly is, and this is true, you have a left brain and a right brain parts that make you think differently on both sides. Your left brain is your logical, verbal part. This is your management side. Your right side is your intuitive, creative side. This is your leadership side. This is your listening to people, you're leading people, you're coaching them. You need to learn to manage from your left and lead from your right. But you need to learn to do both. One is not effective without the other, and I've seen owners that do both, either one or the other, but not both. So the third level, the empathic level of communication, is realizing that I have someone in my office, an employee, who's looking at this situation differently than me, but we can disagree and both be right. Think of the old woman and the young woman. You need to value the differences in your perceptions. You need to have them help you see what they see. And that's exactly what you should say. Help me out here. Help me see what it is that you see. What am I missing here? And start asking questions that make you understand how they're seeing things that you just don't see them that way. So many of us have to deal with change in our offices a lot. And if you aren't dealing with change, then I almost have to say shame on you, because if you're not changing anything in your company, then I hope you're either doing $5 million a year or you're going to stay right where you're at. So you always want to be dealing with change, making things better, not fixing things to change, making things better because you're doing these at an important stage rather than at an urgent stage. Synergy is powerful in dealing with negative forces when you're trying to get change through your company. They'll work against, negative forces will work against any growth and change. When you got positive forces, you've got positive driving forces. So let's use the example of, say, for example, your company does not use aprons. If it does not, I say, insane. How in the world you can clean a house without an apron efficiently and quality-driven is beyond my comprehension. So if you aren't using them, you really need to consider using aprons. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother webinar. But let's say your company doesn't use them and they don't use them because your employees all say they never want to wear aprons. They're doing just fine now. Why do we have to wear them? Blah, blah, blah. Those are restraining forces. Now, if your company is synergized and you're all working together, you will come in there and say, oh my gosh, look at what I found. These things are amazing. They're going to save you time. You aren't going to have to walk back and forth. Our quality is going to be better because when you see that bug in the corner, you can take your whisk broom and flick it out of there. Great process, great tool, this apron. They're going to go, great, because they're all positive. They're synergized. They aren't defensive of what you're saying. If it's reasonable, if it's logical, if it's something that they can consciously conceive and it's going to save them time and money, so economically wise, it's great. You are going to have no trouble moving this forward because your people all understand that that's going to be better. It's a different way, and it's a better way. They'll be fine with it. Now, if you've got negative people in there, they're going to say anything they can. They're going to say, this isn't going to work. I don't want to do it. I'm just fine as it is now. Why do we have to change? They're going to be emotional about it when you say to them, well, you give them an example where the apron would be very useful, like having your dust rag and your Windex rag right there on you so you don't have to go around the room twice and you save steps. They're going to go, doesn't take that much longer. I just take my Windex rag with me. They're going to be, they'll get emotional to the point where they're going to say, I'm just not going to wear them. If I have to do that, I'm quitting. And when you try and take it back again to the logic, like what about all the rags that you ladies or employees keep leaving at customers' homes? Now they'll be in the pocket of your apron, so I won't have to listen to that. They're going to just not see any logic in it whatsoever. They're going to argue and not have any logic, and they're going to argue unconsciously. They aren't going to be thinking about what you're saying at all. They are just responding. If you've got those restraining forces going, it's going to be difficult for you to do anything, and you need to get back to getting the whole office to synergize and going through the steps to get it to synergize. But these are both very real, and they must both be taken into account when you're dealing with change. And you need to figure out which communication style you're going to use to make it work in either one of these situations, and they both are very different. I suggest that either if you have the second situation, you have some big positive rollout and try and get these people synergized. Highly dependent people are usually your troublemakers when it comes to something like this. They're borrowing their strength from and their position and power from talking you out of this. Highly dependent people oftentimes, even though we would think that they would be, because they're incapable of taking care of themselves and need help from everybody, you would think they would be the quiet ones, but no, they're normally the more boisterous ones because that's the way they get help from other people. They like win-lose. They want to call you down in front of their peers so they have all this power so people listen to them and they keep waiting on them hand and foot, kind of wanting to be popular. And the person who wants to be popular will also talk lose-win. There will be no win-win. They will not. They don't want to listen to you. They want to manipulate the rest of the people in the room. If you do have that situation, then you might be better off doing one-on-one rollouts of aprons. But you do need to fix that because you have no synergy and they're going to blast everything you do every single time. Synergy can't survive in an environment where you have those people together, which is why I said you might be better off rolling your aprons out one at a time, one-on-one, and starting with a team that's very positive and easy to deal with. But you do have a root of a problem there, and you might want to just start teaching the 7 habits to them. It wouldn't hurt. Owner cloning is a problem. You want to mold them over into your own thinking. You want them to think just like you. Remember, that loses its creativity, and when you tell them to think like you, it isn't coming from their heart, and it won't last for very long. Strength of relationship is having another point of view. You realize that these employees make you stronger because you're taking out their seeds of greatness. And you realize they're different, and they say, hey, what if we did this or what if we did that? A lot of my good cleaning ideas came from my cleaners when we were sitting down talking about ideas. Remember, sameness is not oneness. Uniformity is not unity. Just because you all do it the same way, it doesn't mean you're united. You could be, you know what, communism is uniformity, but it isn't necessarily unity of the people. Complementariness, if there is such a word, is not the sameness, is not sameness. Sameness is creative and uncreative and boring. We don't want to be the same. We want to complement one another. We want to be interdependent, and there's no reason to be interdependent with somebody who's exactly like you. In order to really synergize your company, you have to have internal security. If you're going to really communicate with your people, then you have to have internal and be secure enough to make yourself vulnerable to those people as well when you're having those one-on-ones. I don't mean talking about your love life or things like that, but I do mean business vulnerability. You have to be willing to tell your people where you're going and what you're making. What is wrong with people knowing what your company is making? I mean, it's public record if you go public. So get yourself ready to go public and be open about it now. But make sure you're being fair. But the more open you are, the more they will believe what you're saying when you say, I don't have the money. If they've seen your books, they know if you do or don't have the money. Now, they got to be mature enough to do that, and you want to do it within a certain level. But share numbers with them and share what's happening with them. I have a company right now that says when they get 100 clients, they can, or 200 clients, they can afford to buy them company cars. That's really sharing the financials with them, and they're driven by that. But when they get to 200, if they don't have the money to buy cars, they're going to have to find it. So, because otherwise they will lose people will lose their trust in them. But if you are secure, it gives you the ability to be open and vulnerable. And owners who are vulnerable are going to get more help from their employees. Has to be win-win. Being principle-centered is very important. It makes us whole. So when we're having this conversation, this gives you the courage part. Remember I said you have to have courage. This is the courage part because you have so much integrity that you're never going to back down in your principles. So the left side of your brain will always pop in when it has to, even though you're being very influenced by the right side to break your rules and give this person another chance for something which they shouldn't receive another chance. You have been communicating so well with them that they're not going to be angry with you. They're going to respect your decision because you've been communicating, and you're going to let your left brain tell your right brain what to do because it has to be a combination of the two. You're a truly integrated left brain, right brain thinker. Okay, logical, verbal, left brain thinking owners will not work when problem solving requires creativity. You are only going over to your left side. Your problem is going to require some kind of a solution that this employee is going to buy into, and they're not going to buy into it if it doesn't come from the right side of your brain where you really understood what the problem is. You can never get your employees to buy into something. They should automatically agree because you have found out what their real problem is. Now, the problem is trying to get that right brain to kick in with the left brain. The left logical brain is very easy for an owner because we all have our policies, our rules, and if you don't, you need them because I said you have to use that left brain. But the right brain might have been dormant for a while because we really are tired of this. We've heard it a million times. We don't want to hear it 1,000,001. We know what's happening. We've been there. So that right brain has just been pretty dormant because we really don't care what our employees have to say. And the muscles haven't developed very much. They're probably atrophied. Actually, our right brain starts going to sleep while we're getting our formal educations in college. Actually, when we're getting our formal educations in high school, we listen, we're lectured to, we're not really asked for our opinion. And then there's a lot of social scripting after that. If we've been employees, we're told what to do. Our society tells us what to do. So our right brain is really pretty programmed to think, don't think on your own, don't listen, don't try and it's not as developed as the left side, which is what we use every day because we have to, because we're logical and we're running businesses. So the right part of your brain is the intuitive, the creative, the visual. The left part is the analytical, the logical, and the verbal. Actually, best suited for reality are both, the logical and the emotional, because that's reality. Reality requires some analytical, logical, verbal strengths to make things happen the way they need to, but it has to have the intuitive, the creative, and the visual, or our employers will never go in that direction because it's not their idea. It doesn't suit them. Value differences in people. Again, going back to the picture. All people see the world not as it is. They see it as they are. That is their sphere of reference. We all do it. The paradigm I am objective is to see the world as it is. I'm sorry. The paradigm of the I am objective, the owner or the supervisor who sees this, they see the world, they think that they see the world as it is because they see the larger picture. I get it. I've been there 1,000 times. I understand this. You don't have to tell me where you're coming from because I get where you're coming from because I've been there so many times. I know how everybody thinks in this world, and only God knows that. They feel that way because they're a supervisor. I mean, they were given that name. That's their position. That's what supervisors are. And as Stephen Covey says, it's like they have supervision. They can see where everybody's coming from because they just know everything instead of asking questions and trying to get inside that employee's head. A truly effective owner has humility. They have reverence. They recognize their own perceptual limitations. They appreciate the rich choices available once they really start interacting with other people. Can two people see things both at the right, disagree at the right time? Can they see exactly the same thing, but they interpret it differently? Don't forget the picture. They're conditioned to view differently. And if you don't manage to hear the whole side, you're going to suffer from a shortage of data and make very bad decisions. You see it differently. Help me see what you see. I so value you. I want to understand. This is what you should put into your head. Close the door, and this is how you should solve any problem, any feedback, any negative feedback that ever has to go to an employee. You see it differently. Help me see what you see. I so value you. I want to understand. What is it? Why is it that you miss this every single time? And keep asking more questions. This creates an environment for synergy. Synergy works because it's correct principles. It's the crowning achievement of all the previous habits. So it's so much fun for that environment. It's teamwork. It's team building. It's everybody wanting to be a stronger team. No negativity in your office. Everybody is always on a high. And why can't you be? Why can't you always be having fun? It's hard not to have fun. You've got to work on being negative. It's developing unity and creativity with other human beings. It makes life so much more fun. Be synergistic inside yourself, even if you're in an adversarial environment. I mean, a lot of you owners right now are going to say, oh, it all sounds great, but all my employees do is nah, 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 nah. Well, you know what? Start with yourself. If somebody says something negative to you, don't take it personally. They're just having a bad day or they're used to doing it. Just let it slide off your shoulders. Do not respond, and don't let it take that smile off your face. Sidestep negative energy. If somebody is negative, say, excuse me, I got to run, or let's go think of something fun and different. Absolutely change the subject. Change the subject. Don't buy into it, whatever you do. Don't look at them and say, well, you're in a lousy mood today. Change the subject to something fun. Did you hear so-and-so's daughter did this or whatever? Keep things light and fun. Look for the good in others and utilize that good. Hey, did you see that she has the most bonus points on the board today? And that's why you should always have some contests going, so it's always fun things to be talking about. Value the difference in other people. When you're having that one-on-one, good, you see it differently. Help me to understand how you see that. When you see only two alternatives, yours and the wrong one, look for a synergistic third alternative. Think of an employee. Now, I want you to put the webinar on pause and think of an employee who typically sees things differently than you do. What words could you use in those differences as a stepping stone so you could get to the third alternative solution? Think of people who have cornered you in your office. Think of situations when you've gotten in arguments with your employees, and I know you do because I hear these stories on the phone all the time. How could you handle that differently when you talk to them? And when you do get into these situations, make sure you ask yourself that when you're done. How could I have handled that differently? It wasn't their fault. If they screamed at you, you said something that made them do that. Ask yourself, how could I have handled that differently? Not, oh my God, she's such a witch and blah, blah, blah. How did you get to that point? You weren't at that point when you interviewed them. How did it get to this? It's your fault, and take responsibility for that. Then I want you to identify a situation and figure out how to make it different. I want you to identify a situation in which you desire greater teamwork and synergy in your office. I mean, what are you going to do? What do you want them to pull together on? Maybe you want them to do flyers and they don't want to do them, or maybe you want them to do aprons and, they're going to walk, or whatever you've got going on. What conditions need to exist to support synergy? What can you do to create those conditions? So I want you to sit down and actually make out a plan. And I'll see you for the last habit, renewal. Welcome back to habit number 7, sharpen the saw. Stephen Covey shares a very good story in the book about a man who's out in the woods sawing a tree down by hand with one of those big old saws, and he's going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it gets harder and harder, and a man comes by and says, boy, wouldn't it go a little bit faster if you'd sharpen that saw? It looks pretty dull. And the man said, oh, haven't got time to stop and do that. The irony of that situation, stop, sharpen it, and get done twice as fast is what habit number 7 is really all about. It's taking the time to do the important things again and again and again. It's preserving and enhancing the greatest asset you have, you. It's taking time for you, because if habits 1, 2, and 3 are really all about you and making you the very best person you can possibly be. If you get there and stop, you will go backwards. Just like if you market in your company and you do the flyers, you do the one-on-ones, you do everything you're supposed to do, you get to, I have clients who are at 200 clients in 2 years. If they stop doing what they're doing right now, they stop the one-on-ones, little by little, they will erode back to 100 clients. Or you sharpen that saw, you continue to do the things that you need to do for yourself and your employees and your company, and they'll be at 300, 400, 500. So the single most important investment you will make in your life is investment in yourself. Sharpen your saw. So renew the 4 dimensions of your nature is what you want to do. So this is truly about us segment, which I really do love. And the first one is physical, exercise. This, of course, would land in quadrant 2. It's not important. It's not urgent. It's important, but it's not urgent. So low on the priority list. If I have to bump something on the to-do list that I can't get done, it will be the exercising. But if you keep it in quadrant 2, eventually it will move itself into quadrant 1 because you've neglected your body. There are 168 hours in a week. Can't you find 3 to 6 hours to exercise? If you would exercise 3 hours a week, you would feel so much better. If you are not doing this, if you are, keep it going. I'm gonna tell you, I just finished a mini triathlon a month ago for the first time in my life. I didn't think I would ever do this. It was a hoot. I didn't prepare enough for it. I only prepared for 4 weeks. But so I only swam like 4 times. But the synergy of this group of people together, the synergy of the people who went up there with me who were really out of shape. I'm 61. We're all, some of these people were like 66, 67, and really not in good physical shape, but they were up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was good for them. They walked a lot. They did a lot of things, took all these pictures. Phenomenal synergy there. And I have never been so pumped. I'll be on a high for at least another 2 months, one of my clients tells me. But I have to keep on going. Now, that's been a month ago, and I didn't do near enough in the last month because I'm just so full of myself. So I've started another program. Now I'm doing Extreme Insanity, which is extremely insane. I got sucked into that infomercial, and by God, I'm going to do it because I'm too tight to let it sit on the shelf. But I'll tell you what, I've been able to walk for a week. It is insane. But the energy you feel from doing this, it doesn't take much time. I recommend that you do something aerobic, which builds your endurance. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this stuff is because I want to have a lot of endurance. I want to have you breathe a lot when you exercise a lot, so the oxygen goes through your body, which is so good for your body as you get older and when you're younger. You should do something that stretches. I do Pilates. That builds flexibility. My mother is in assisted living. She had a stroke 2 years ago, and it's amazing to me to watch these people. And they were all farmers' wives, actually, some farmers in there. And when it comes to being able to move fairly good, they're not bad because they were flexible their whole lives. So something to stretch. And then something that builds strength, like push-ups or pull-ups or sit-ups or weights. I use 10-pound weights. I use it's just all four of these should be hit sometime during the week. I also recommend you get something in your home. You try and do it there because it will make you do it more often. If you need the support of a gym, then go to a gym, but that eats up an awful lot of time in an owner's day. I was lucky enough, as our business became very successful, that I built a gym in my backyard, which was perfect because I can walk from my house to my gym, work out, and then go back into the house. So I have this essence of leaving the house. I like that. And coming back, but one shower, I mean, I can do it at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't have to pack up all my stuff, go to the gym. You can also do it before I had the gym, I did it in my house. I always had DVDs that I threw in the TV. I love DVDs. That's what I still work out to because you have a variety. But you have to be self-disciplined to do this. If you need other people to move you, then you might want to go back and take a look at step one. So the second thing is spiritual. This is the core, the center, the commitment to your value systems that you make day in and day out because of what put it there. Different people renew in different ways. Some use quiet time in the morning with spiritual readings. I read the Bible every morning, and then I plan my day. So that's about 40 minutes of morning. You get up early if you're wanting to do these things, but my day is ready to go when I'm done with that, and I am very calm for at least 10 minutes. Some people take walks in nature. I live on a ranch. I love walks in nature, but that is not the way I start my day. Some people like to go take a long walk in the morning. Good idea. Reading. Some people get up in the morning and do a lot of reading. As I said, I read the Bible. Some people read inspirational readings, but it's something that keeps you centered. Normally, it has something to do with your values, so it keeps you centered on your values, and you aren't just go all day long, putting out fires and putting kids here and doing this and doing that. If you don't give some thought every day to your values, they will slip away from you just like anything else in life. This, too, is time-consuming. As I said, it takes me about 40 minutes a day. It could go to it's also in quadrant 2. It's important. It's not urgent that I do that every day. But if I gave it up, I would eventually. And when I do, sometimes I do let that go on a back burner. I can tell when I'm slipping away. And I have to get back to my core values and back to reading about what a good human being really is and gaining some humility. So it prepares you for your day. Mental is the education, the continuing education that you need to do to continually sharpen your saw. It's a vital part of your renewal. If you it continues to hone and expand your mind. There's a variety of venues that you can use to do this. There's workshops. There's things you can watch. There's videos. I mean, come on, Google's at your fingertips, so it's not hard to learn anymore these days. You can read. You can go to seminars. You just need to continue to educate yourself. But with that, I caution you to make sure in the business education side that you are also applying what you learn. If you keep going to conferences or you keep listening to webinars or you keep reading, but your business runs exactly the way that today like it did a year ago, then I say you're not reading new things or you're not applying what you're learning, then stop and do some application. Again, it's a quadrant 2 activity. You don't have to do any of this. You can survive without educating yourself. You can learn through experience. But it does become more difficult, and you should renew your education. The last is social, emotional. These are habits 4, 5, and 6, and this is a little bit more difficult to sharpen. You have to have self-confidence. You have to be harmonious with your 2 principles. It's something hard to put a finger on, but you catch yourself at work slipping out of the seek to understand rather than to be understood mode. You have to fix all of these things because it's very difficult to please forgive me for that interruption. Never a dull moment in any world, correct? This is as I was saying, the socio-emotional side, a harder one to put a finger on. When you see yourself falling away from communicating the way you need to catch yourself and get yourself back into listening to understand rather than to being understood. It requires you keeping yourself very humble, as I said earlier. So it's some of the things you can do to keep yourself centered in this and sharpen the saw that you're always giving is to do more volunteer work, to give generously of your time and money, to do things like cleaning for heroes, cleaning for a reason, joining philanthropic things, doing things for your employees, giving them things without them having to do anything to get it. Just the more generous you are and the more time you spend in giving, the more humble you become. So just make sure that you continue to do that. You don't get full of yourself once you start getting very wealthy, which we hope you will. So the physical side is the economic side. The spiritual side is the service, the job, the contribution to the organization you give. The mental side is how, well, it's all in your company, I'm sorry. The physical side of your company is your economic side. When you are renewing the saw at your company, and you should be renewing the saw there and putting your company through the 7 habits, it's the economic side. And this is, the company is, of course, you. You need to make sure that you always have a very secure environment for your employees. If you are having to have a manager or an employee run your checks to the bank so that their payroll checks don't bounce, and they know that, that is not security for your employees. That is not providing the environment that you need to provide. You need to provide them with a secure economic side. So you need to do a budget, you need to make that budget work, and you need to always never go outside the bounds of that budget. And that's how you sharpen the saw in your company, is you put together a budget. So you are working within means, so you don't have this stress because, oh my gosh, we only have $300 in the bank and I got payroll hitting and what am I going to do? Nobody should ever know that. Nobody should ever feel that, and you should never feel that. If you do feel that, you need to sharpen the saw of your budget in your company. Spiritual is the service side of your company, the job that you all do in your homes. Are you consistently bringing peace and harmony to homes in your people in your community because they walk into a clean home? There's no rag left in the middle of the couch, so there's no stress. You didn't leave the door unlocked. They get to walk in, see the home exactly as they want to see it. That's a wonderful thing you do for your community. You're bringing peace and harmony in homes. Or are you leaving them full of stress? And the contribution the organization gives as a whole to the community. Things that you might do for the community, volunteer things you do. Mental for your company is how your people are developed and used. Are you developing your people? Are you using your people? Are you empowering your people? How are you using them? That's the mental side of your company that needs to be continually sharpened. Are you constantly looking at how you can develop your people more? Are you constantly sharpening that saw, the use of your people? And the social, emotional side your people are seeing is how are your people treated? Are they treated great? Are you always putting them first? Are you listening to them? Are you understanding them? Are you hearing their needs? Are you satisfying their needs? Are you being fair with them? Are they disciplined because they need that too? How are your people being treated? Exercise all four dimensions of our nature regularly and consistently in wise and balanced ways. So exercise all 4 of those dimensions and consistently exercise them. To do this, this requires you being proactive. You're going to have to go back to step 1 and put this into your to-do list. All 4 of these things are quadrant 2 activities. Quadrant 1 things are urgent because they act on us. We must press on quadrant 2 until it becomes kind of a healthy addiction. So we must keep going to quadrant 2 and making that as urgent as quadrant 1. No one else can do this for us. We must do it ourselves, which is true of all of the 7 habits. Renewal is the principle, and it's the process that empowers us to move in an upward spiral of growth and change, of continuous improvement. As I said, if you don't renew and you stay where you are, eventually you will even go backwards, but there will be no continual improvement process. There is no shortcut. You reap what you sow. If you want to be physically healthy, you're going to have to take some time getting your body in shape. If you want to have all the energy you need to have to do all these habits, then you need to get up in the morning and get that body moving by doing some exercising. You need to learn, you need to commit, and you need to do it on an increasing or higher plane. I started exercising about 12 years ago on a regular basis. Before that, my bones were probably atrophying. And I went on a cruise with some friends, and we got on the wrong cruise, and everybody was 70 years or older. And we got to our floor every night, and there were walkers. I mean, you could barely walk around the walkers. And these people were going to buffet, eating mounds of food. And I went, oh, my God. And I was 50, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to be on a walker when I am as young as some of these people were. They were only 65. I mean, I was only 15 years away from that, and they're on walkers. I went up to the gym. I paid $25 to find out my body fat. And they asked me why I was there, and I said so I wouldn't be on a walker when I was 75. And I committed myself to this. And it's amazing, back then I was doing some videos and doing some things. I mean, I was never in terrible shape, but I was never in good shape. I cannot believe that a month ago, I rose to the level of doing a mini triathlon. You want to continue to put yourself on a higher plane, and you can do that. That's what the 7 habits are all about. So you need to learn, you need to commit to do it, and then you need to do it. And then you need to learn some more, and you need to commit to do that, and then you need to do that. And you need to learn to commit, and you need to do it again and again and again. It takes discipline. That's all there is to it. So I want you to do your last exercise, which is I want you to make a list of activities that would help you keep in good physical shape, that would fit your lifestyle, and that you could enjoy over time. Enjoy doing. I loved doing the things I was doing. It was actually fun to go swimming a couple times and to hop on the bike and go bike riding to get ready for the bike ride. I actually swam a half a mile. I biked 15 and a half miles, and I ran 3.5 miles around the lake, 3.4 miles around the lake. It was fun getting ready for that. My boyfriend and I would get on bikes and do some bike riding, do something you would enjoy doing. And I'd also like you to make a list of relationships that you would like to improve and set about improving those, which is going back almost to habit 2, which is begin with the end in mind. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for this trilogy. I do want to say that I dedicate this trilogy to Stephen F. Covey. He died in July. He was a phenomenal man who lived his values. He was 79 years old. He was bad biking, of course, because he was physically fit. He was out riding his bicycle, and he was got in a bad accident, and died on July 16th, 79 years old. A wonderful man, and he gave us a lot of values, a lot of direction. It's one thing to hear these things, but quite another for men who could actually put it into an action plan for us, which is amazing. So my heart goes out to his family, and I dedicate this trilogy to Stephen R. Covey, a great man. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you at the next webinar. Please don't forget to sharpen your saw. Don't forget to get your habits going.